At dawn, Rome did not wake to birdsong but to the echo of chains dragged across stone, and if you stood near the Forum long enough you would learn that justice here had a sound, a smell, and a rhythm, because Rome did not merely punish, it performed suffering as a warning, a ritual, a lesson burned into flesh, and long before marble statues and golden eagles came to define the empire, fear was its true foundation, fear enforced by punishment so precise and so merciless that even Romans later pretended they had never existed. Yet once there was a man sewn alive into a leather sack, with a dog snapping at his legs, a snake coiling against his chest, a rooster screaming into the darkness, and a monkey clawing his face as the sack was thrown into a river because he had killed his father, and Rome believed such a crime ruptured the universe itself. And elsewhere, a woman stood barefoot on hot sand in the Colosseum as 50,000 citizens roared while a starving lion paced toward her, its ribs visible, its hunger deliberate, because damnatio ad bestias was not meant to kill quickly but to turn death into entertainment, and the crowd learned to cheer while bones cracked and prayers vanished into dust. And in the shadows of the city crosses lined the roads like forests of agony where men did not die for hours or days but slowly collapsed inward as their lungs failed and insects fed on open wounds, crucifixions stretching pain across time until the victim begged not for mercy but for the end, while soldiers gambled beneath them and philosophers debated virtue nearby. And when Rome's own soldiers failed, discipline came not from forgiveness but from decimation, where 1 man in 10 was chosen by chance and beaten to death by his comrades so that loyalty would be welded with guilt, a punishment so effective it hollowed entire legions from the inside. And when fire was chosen as justice, it was not because it was quick, but because it erased. Arsonists and traitors tied to stakes as flames climbed methodically, the crowd watching skin blister and peel, while smoke carried screams upward like offerings, and yet even death could be delayed further, as Vestal virgins accused of breaking sacred vows were not executed because their blood was holy, but sealed alive underground with a lamp and a crust of bread so Rome could pretend the gods had chosen the outcome. And sometimes punishment did not touch the body at all but annihilated the soul, as names were scraped from stone, faces shattered on statues, histories rewritten through damnatio memoriae until a person was not merely dead but officially never born, while others were abandoned at crossroads or hillsides, infants, criminals, the unwanted, left exposed to beasts and cold because Rome considered some lives unworthy of burial. And there were whips too, weighted with bone and metal, tearing flesh so deeply that organs spilled before sentences were complete, and arenas where condemned men were forced into gladiatorial combat with no training and no armor, fighting not for glory but for delay, because every heartbeat mattered when death was guaranteed, and cliffs like the Tarpeian Rock where traitors were hurled without appeal, bodies shattered below as a reminder that the state was older than mercy. And Rome called all of this law, called it order, called it civilization. Yet as centuries passed and Christianity rose and emperors changed, these punishments became inconvenient, embarrassing relics of a truth too ugly to preserve, so they were softened in texts, stripped of detail, dismissed as exaggeration, because Rome wanted to be remembered for its roads and aqueducts, not for the screams that once echoed between them. But history is stubborn, and even when words are erased, scars remain in stone, in bones, in silence. And if you listen closely enough, beneath the grandeur of the empire, you can still hear it, the sound Rome tried hardest to bury, the sound of justice screaming back. Became inconvenient, embarrassing relics of a truth too ugly to preserve, so they were softened in texts, stripped of detail, dismissed as exaggeration, because Rome wanted to be remembered for its roads and aqueducts, not for the screams that once echoed between them. But history is stubborn, and even when words are erased, scars remain in stone, in bones, in silence. And if you listen closely enough, beneath the grandeur of the empire, you can still hear it, the sound Rome tried hardest to bury, the sound of justice screaming back. Rome turned its violence inward through decimation, forcing comrades to kill comrades, each blow landing heavier than the last because survival meant living with what you had done, a punishment that disciplined bodies but shattered souls. And fire, always fire, was Rome's final eraser, consuming traitors and arsonists alike, flesh curling and splitting as smoke carried the smell of burning hair across forums where philosophers debated virtue without looking up, and beneath temples. Sacred women accused of impurity were sealed into stone wombs beneath the earth, lamps flickering, air thinning, death arriving slowly so that Rome could claim innocence while the gods took responsibility. And when the state wished to kill without blood, it erased memory itself, chiseling names from monuments, breaking faces from statues, rewriting records so completely that families were forced to pretend their loved ones had never existed. A punishment that extended forever because history itself became hostile, and those deemed unworthy of any ritual at all were cast out, left at crossroads, cliffs, or wilderness edges where exposure did the work quietly, hunger and cold replacing executioners, while others were flogged so savagely that death arrived mid-sentence, bodies collapsing under lashes weighted with bone and iron. Justice measured not in fairness but endurance, and through it all Rome insisted this was civilization, that order required terror, that fear was the price of peace. Yet as centuries passed and new beliefs spread, these punishments became stains too dark to polish, so scribes softened language, historians shortened descriptions, laws quietly changed, and cruelty was buried beneath marble and myth. But cruelty does not disappear. It lingers in cracks of stone, in blood-darkened soil, in the uncomfortable silence between what Rome celebrated and what it did. And if you stand long enough in the ruins after sunset, when tourists are gone and the wind moves freely through broken arches, you may still feel it, that ancient understanding that this empire was not held together by roads or laws or glory, but by the unspoken agreement that pain, carefully designed and publicly displayed, was the truest language of power, and that is the truth Rome tried hardest to forget.